Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a one-room log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky, a place that today stands as a symbol of humble beginnings. His father, Thomas Lincoln, was a frontier farmer, while his mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, died when Abraham was only 9 years old. That loss left a deep scar, shaping the sensitive, reflective child into the compassionate man he would become. As a boy, Lincoln worked hard alongside his father, clearing fields, splitting rails, and tending crops. The frontier was harsh and unforgiving, and young Abraham's opportunities for formal education were sparse. Altogether, he attended less than a year of school, but he was a voracious reader, teaching himself by the dim light of the hearth. He read the Bible, Aesop's fables, Shakespeare, and any other book he could borrow, hungry for knowledge in a world that seemed determined to withhold it. When Lincoln was 21, his family moved to Illinois, seeking better prospects. It was here that Lincoln began to carve out his own identity, first as a laborer, then as a store clerk, and eventually as a self-taught lawyer. He was known for his honesty and fairness, so much so that he gained the nickname Honest Abe, a reputation that would serve him well in public life. He was elected to the Illinois state legislature in 1834 as a member of the Whig Party. Lincoln quickly gained a reputation for his eloquence and his strong opposition to the spread of slavery. Even as a young legislator, he saw the contradictions between the ideals of American liberty and the institution of slavery. In 1842, he married Mary Todd, a well-educated and ambitious woman from a prominent Kentucky family. Their marriage was both passionate and turbulent, buffeted by personal loss and public pressure. Of their 4 children, only one, Robert, would survive to adulthood. The deaths of their sons weighed heavily on both Abraham and Mary, compounding the burdens of political life. Throughout the 1840s and 1850s, the United States was torn by the question of slavery. Lincoln's career reflected the nation's struggle. After a single term in Congress, he returned to Springfield, Illinois, focusing on his law practice. But the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1854, which opened new territories to slavery, drew Lincoln back into politics. He spoke out forcefully against the act, arguing that slavery must not be allowed to spread. His debates with Senator Stephen A. Douglas brought him national attention and crystallized the central issue of his public life: the moral, legal, and political struggle over slavery. In 1860, at a time of national crisis, the Republican Party nominated Abraham Lincoln for president. He was an unlikely candidate, a country lawyer from Illinois, lacking formal education and national political experience. Yet Lincoln's integrity, eloquence, and commitment to principle resonated with a divided nation. He won the presidency in a bitterly contested election without carrying a single Southern state. His election was the breaking point for the South. One by one, Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. As Abraham Lincoln took the oath of office on March 4, 1861, the country was on the brink of civil war. Lincoln called upon the nation to remain united, reminding his countrymen that they were not enemies but friends. But war came. The Confederate attack on Fort Sumter in April 1861 ignited the bloodiest conflict in American history. Lincoln, with no military experience, found himself leading a nation at war with itself. He struggled to balance conflicting pressures demanding generals, political factions, and a public growing weary of bloodshed. Throughout the war, Lincoln's resolve never wavered. He dedicated himself to preserving the Union, believing it essential not just for Americans, but for the future of democracy itself. He said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." For Lincoln, the Union was more than a political entity. It was a moral cause. The war was brutal and long. Lincoln faced setbacks on the battlefield and criticism at home. Many doubted his leadership. Others despised him for refusing to compromise on the issue of slavery. In 1862, he issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that as of January 1st, 1863, all slaves in rebellious states would be, then thenceforward and forever free. It was a bold and controversial act, shifting the war's purpose from simply preserving the Union to ending slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation was not merely symbolic. It transformed the Civil War into a struggle for human freedom, giving hope to millions, and striking a blow against the Confederacy's foundation. It allowed black men to join the Union Army, strengthening its ranks with soldiers who had the most to gain from victory. Yet the path to victory was long and costly. Lincoln bore the sorrow of loss, not just of his own sons, but of countless American families. He visited wounded soldiers, read the names of the dead, and grieved the division that tore the nation apart. In 1863, at Gettysburg, Lincoln delivered one of the most famous speeches in American history. In just 272 words, he consecrated the battlefield and reaffirmed the nation's commitment to the principle that all men are created equal. He challenged Americans to ensure that government of the people, by the people, shall not perish from the earth. The Gettysburg Address, brief but profound, distilled the meaning of the war and the purpose of the nation. Lincoln's leadership was tested at every turn. He faced opposition from radical Republicans who demanded harsher measures against the South, and from peace Democrats who urged an end to the war at any cost. He navigated these currents with patience, humility, and shrewd political skill, always keeping his eye on the ultimate goal, reunion and freedom. He called for malice toward none, with charity for all, urging reconciliation between North and South. His second inaugural address, delivered just weeks before his death, stands as a testament to his magnanimity and wisdom. He acknowledged the shared guilt of North and South in the sin of slavery and urged Americans to bind up the nation's wounds. On April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The Union had been preserved, and slavery was on the path to extinction. Lincoln's vision had prevailed, but he would not live to guide the nation through its recovery. On the night of April 14, 1865, while attending a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. He died the following morning, plunging the nation into mourning. The loss was profound, and for many, it seemed that the hope of reconciliation and progress died with him. But Lincoln's legacy endured. His leadership during the darkest hours of American history preserved the Union and ended slavery. His words, spoken in humility and conviction, continue to inspire those who struggle for justice, liberty, and equality. Abraham Lincoln was a man of paradoxes. Born in poverty, yet he led a nation. Largely self-educated, yet among the greatest of American writers. Gentle in spirit, yet unyielding in purpose. His vision, that America could live up to its founding promise, has never lost its power to move and challenge each new generation. He became a symbol of unity and freedom, the great emancipator. Monuments were raised in his honor, from the humble log cabin of his birth to the majestic Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., where his statue presides over the National Mall, gazing across the reflecting pool toward the Capitol. There, engraved in stone, are the words of his greatest speeches, a testament to his enduring influence. Lincoln's achievements cannot be measured merely by laws passed or battles won. He believed, in his words, that right makes might, not the other way around. He held to the belief that the United States was a country not of perfect people, but of people striving always to be better, to fulfill the ideals enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. He faced personal hardships that would have broken lesser men: the early loss of his mother, the deaths of his children, the unrelenting criticism of his enemies, the burdens of command, and the weight of a fractured nation. Yet through it all, he remained steadfast, guided by his conscience and a deep sense of duty. Lincoln understood the complexity of human nature and the nation he led. He knew that healing the nation would require more than military victory. It would demand compassion and understanding. His vision for reconstruction was rooted in forgiveness, not vengeance, a vision that, tragically, was not realized after his death. Over the generations, Americans have turned to Lincoln's words in times of crisis and hope. His legacy has been claimed by many: abolitionists, civil rights leaders, and all those who dream of a more just society. The promise of equality he articulated at Gettysburg and in the Emancipation Proclamation continues to guide the nation as conscience. For all his greatness, Lincoln never lost sight of his own limitations. He was self-deprecating and humble, often poking fun at his own appearance and background. He said, "I am nothing, but truth is everything." This humility endeared him to those who knew him and allowed him to bridge divides that seemed insurmountable. Lincoln's humor was legendary, a tool he used to disarm critics and lighten the burdens of office. He told stories and jokes with a warmth and wit that made him approachable even in the highest office of the land. Yet beneath the humor was a deep sadness, an awareness of the suffering around him and the consequences of his decisions. He was also a master communicator. His speeches, simple, direct, and powerful, remain models of clarity and persuasion. He called upon Americans to be worthy of the sacrifices made to preserve the Union and end slavery. He proved that leadership requires not just strength, but empathy, not just vision, but the patience to see it realized. Lincoln's assassination was a national tragedy, but his influence lived on. His dream of a new birth of freedom helped lay the foundation for future progress in civil rights and justice. His example continues to inspire leaders around the world, reminding us that, even in the face of division and conflict, it is possible to hold fast to principle and lead with compassion. His story is the story of America, of hope and heartbreak, of struggle and progress, of ideals challenged and reaffirmed. As we reflect on Lincoln's life and legacy, we are called to honor his memory not just with words, but with deeds. To strive as he did, to bind up the nation's wounds, to fight for justice, and to seek the better angels of our nature. In doing so, we keep alive the vision of a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Abraham Lincoln's journey from the Kentucky frontier to the White House, from poverty to the presidency, reminds us that greatness can arise from the humblest beginnings. And in the words he spoke at Gettysburg, we find a call to action: that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.